It's because of the money. And of course, money is my central raison d'etre. I was a soldier, a spy, but there's one underlying theme to my life, and that was money. On the teams, I was the money guy. You know, you have the sniper, you have the torturer, you have specialties. And I was the guy who made sure things happened through money. They trained me to be the world's most effective covert operative financier. And he said, look, from now on, when you enter a room, there's only three things that can happen. You're going to be the smartest, best educated, best connected guy in the room, or you're going to be the deadliest guy in the room. And the third time, most of the time, you're going to be both. The CIA has always been involved in nefarious things. Vietnam, they did heroin. In my area, it was cocaine. The fight for freedom requires off-the-books money. And all the off-the-books money comes from off-the-books things. Pablo walks in with his cousin, Gustavo. They're dressed in cowboy shirts, jeans, and cowboy boots. He hired me to be his CFO. And there were other little gangs. Okay, there were the Ochoas, the Gachas, the Leathers, the Rodriguezes. They were all separate gangs. But when I came on board for Pablo, I brought corporate organization to the team. And that gave Pablo a distinct advantage to every other gang. So slowly Pablo didn't take them over, but he in fact became the leader among equal. Besides being protected, I'm triply protected. I'm protected by the money, by the cartel, and by the CIA. I'm untouchable.
Guys, welcome back to Not Guilty TV. Today we've got an absolutely fantastic guest. Today we are joined by Ramon Milian Rodriguez. Also, as I will refer to you as Dr. Milian, as Pablo used to back in the day. So for people who don't know, Ramon was pivotal and sort of one of the brains behind the Medellin cartel, and was also one of the biggest money launderers in the world. Whilst this was all going on, he was actually a CIA operative as well, who was tasked with hunting down communists within South America and killing them. An absolutely insane journey. He ended up being imprisoned in 1983, was it, sir?
I went in at the end of 1985.
1985.
I was arrested in 83, and then I went through 3 trials. I got 2 hung juries, and finally I was convicted at the end. And I went in December of 85.
It's absolutely insane. And like you said, for you, a lot of this stuff seemed normal at the time, but your life was very abnormal from the start. And if possible, I'd like to go back to the start of your journey, if possible, Dr. Milian, and talk about your upbringing in Cuba and what age you were there till. And your family were quite successful, weren't they?
Yes, I left Cuba actually 19 days after Fidel Castro took over the island. And my family, the crown, the jewel in the crown of our family was our bank. Back then, you didn't have all this branch banking and all these multinational banks going around. Most people just had one bank. When Fidel Castro came into Havana, he started confiscating assets of the wealthy and ruling class. And the very first bank that he confiscated was my family's bank. And of course, we were overnight destitute. Um, and we left. Um, and of course, we left with nothing, just the clothes on our back. Came to the United States, and quite frankly, um, we weren't ready for it. Nobody planned for failure. Nobody planned for the apocalypse of our family. So it's quite difficult. Um, you wake up one day in the morning, and you're on top of the world, and you think your life is set in stone. Um, and that evening, you're told we have to run. Uh, uh, Take a small bag, put what you want to save because we have to leave. Um, then you get to a land where you do not speak the language, and you have absolutely no idea where your next meal is going to come from. And then you go through um, all of the vicissitudes of exiles. We went through selling all of my mother's jewelry um, to to survive. My father ended up parking cars at the Fontainebleau Hotel because, of course, we weren't prepared for anything but the easy life. So my father had no skills. My father was trained to take over for my grandfather and so forth. And um, so all of a sudden you find yourself in a strange land, and you have absolutely no skills other than being rich. Um, it's a horrible thing. So we went through some very bad times, but we survived it.
Absolutely. Um, and so whereabouts did you settle in America, sir?
Okay, well, we came to Miami first. Okay, Miami is a couple of hundred miles from Cuba. It's quite frankly, my family's opinion was, um, let's go have a vacation in Miami. In a few months, this will blow over. They'll understand that they need us, and they'll ask us back. You know, it didn't turn out to be that way, but that's exactly what happened. We stayed at the Fontainebleau Hotel, sold my mom's jewelry, and then when the money ran out, my dad went from being a guest at the hotel to a valet parker at the hotel. It's a precipitous drop. We went from being guests at the Fontainebleau to renting a small bungalow in Miami where 20 family members lived with one bathroom. Uh, so it was really shocking to go through it. And I'm sure every immigrant family has similar stories. But we were here in Miami because we were planning on going back, and um, uh, it never crossed anybody's mind that we had lost our homeland, lost our homeland, lost our homes, lost our businesses, lost everything. It took years to accept this. All all humans go through the same steps of crisis: denial, anger, uh, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And that can take 5 minutes or 5 years. For the Cuban community, it took years to get to acceptance. Um, and that's why we invaded the island. That's why uh, we became Cold War warriors. That's why we ended up fighting all over Central and South America. And at the end, we were labeled terrorists. So it was a long journey, and not everybody survived. And we accepted, and we became assimilated, and here we are.
Indeed. And so, like you said, because people had the vision that they were going to be going back within a year or two, that obviously affected their ability to settle because they weren't trying to settle at the same time. So they didn't, I can imagine all the adults didn't adjust at all to the American way of life and try and pick up the language and everything else about it over those initial few years until the reality kicked in. Obviously, as that must have been horrifically difficult for the whole community as such. And this is why it created a certain type of person or certain type of character within the Cuban community.
Well, there was a mindset. We were going back, and that mindset was don't create roots in this place. We're just passing through. And all the energy was uh, aimed at let's survive the moment and let's plan on getting back. I said my dad was a valet parker at the Fontainebleau, but he wasn't the only one. Our family dentist was a ballet parker. Our family general practitioner was a ballet parker. The first wave of Cubans were all the intelligentsia, the rich businessmen. It wasn't the typical immigration. America says, give us your poor, and it wasn't like that for us. The first wave was all the professionals, all the business owners, all the people that were descendants of the original settlers to Cuba. I mean, my family. Columbus got there in what 1490 something, and my first ancestors from Spain got there maybe 30 or 40 years later. I mean, we were original colonists. So we had very deep roots in the island. Um, and it was just impossible for my parents' generation to accept that. When it came time to invade the island, we sent the cream of the crop. We sent every able-bodied teenager, every young man that we had to invade that beach. I had several. I was too young. I was 11 years old, but I had several family members on that beach, and one died. My very close. In Spanish, we call it primo hermano, a brother cousin, because you're cousins from siblings. Uh, um, and he died. Osvaldo died on that
I'd like to
beach.
say rest in peace to Osvaldo and everyone else who obviously lost their life and got
Thank
let
you.
down by the Americans.
Well, yes. Look, we're talking in hindsight. At that moment, on that beach, that day, those weeks and months, we felt betrayed.
Well, like you said, it's not just hindsight. Hindsight's 2020, so it's easy to look back and say you shouldn't have done this. But a lot of false promises got made by the Americans that they were going to support the Cubans, and the Americans didn't do what they said or what they agreed to on their part. And so the Cubans who went there, some of them were lambs for the slaughter.
Yes.
Excuse my terminology, obviously. I know
No,
that
look, America. I have a love-hate relationship with America.
I can imagine.
Uh, um, I love the place. Americans are wonderful people. Um, but the American ruling class, the American government, are are not very nice people. America, to me, now I'm a 73-year-old man. I've been through a lot. America is a Potemkin village. Do you know the term? Excuse me if I sound
No, I
pedantic.
haven't heard that word before. To say again, Patek.
A Potemkin village.
Yes.
Okay. During the time of the czars, whenever the czar wanted to go out for a ride in his buggy or a horseback ride, um, his prime minister, a guy by the name of Potemkin, made sure that all the villages around where the czar was going to ride, all the villagers were bathed, well dressed, and had uh, food to eat. Because the czar wanted to ride through and see all his happy happy people, right?
Yeah.
And those were called Potemkin villages. Because the minute the czar drove away or rode away, the troops would go in, take the animals, take the clothing from the villagers, and they would go back to their grubby existence. Okay.
Yeah, I know exactly what you
America,
mean.
yeah, America, the whole country is a huge Potemkin village. It's a beautiful place, highly maintained uh, by the blood and suffering of the rest of the world. Okay? Um, America is going to fight for the freedom of America to the last drop of blood of everybody else in the world. Okay? It sends troops to fight wars that are convenient for America. But for instance, World War II, I mean, the Russians lost 20 million. I don't know how many Britain lost, but America lost, five or 600,000. So the losses for Americans were relatively light, and the return was huge. Uh, Korea, again, they sent a few thousand people. Um, Vietnam, again, they lost 50,000. But there's a pattern here. All of the people that die in America's foreign wars are usually minorities and the poor. Uh,
It's an absolute disgrace. Britain are exactly the same. They're fighting these wars all around the world. They're not convenient. They're
yeah,
convenient monetary purposes or power
absolutely.
purposes or oil
It's all about
purposes.
money.
It's absolutely disgusting. And no one's invaded America or Britain. So why they're fighting continuous wars is absolutely disgusting.
Well, it's because of the money. And of course, money is my central raison d'etre.
Of
You,
course.
you said I was many things. I was a soldier, a spy, many, many things. But there's one underlying theme to my life, and that was money. You can do nothing without money. You can't fight wars without money. You can't scheme without money. You can't do covert things without money. And I was trained as a money man. I was on the teams. I was the money guy. You have the sniper, you have the torturer, you have specialties. I was the guy um, who made sure things happen through money. It's wonderful to see all these movies. When you see James Bond and he gets into the Aston Martin, nobody asks how the hell did they get an Aston Martin to him?
Of course.
When he gets on a private plane and goes to a place, nobody asks how did they arrange for that plane to go. When teams get to a place, they have a safe house, a home, they have vehicles, they have weapons, and nobody asks how did this happen? It's movie magic. But a very real fact is that things that happen in movies happen in real life. But to happen in real life, you need a guy like me to arrange the logistics, the security, the bribing of people, the planes, the cars, the false documents. All that costs money. Okay. So on a team, I was the guy with the most need to know. Everybody is told what they need to know, you know. But if you're handling the money, you need to know everything. You need to know where they're going, what they're going to do, what they're going to need. And I was trained in two specific things. Um, the arrangement of everything, the logistics, etc. And then the erasure, because you have to go back after you do something and erase every trace, you know. Um, and unfortunately, it's an ugly world. You know, you see me now, this old man, you know, but you know, I had my day. You know, I was uh, I was a pretty deadly guy. You know, I went through the School of the Americas. Um, and the School of the Americas has one thing in common: not everybody graduates. And when I mean not everybody graduates, I mean they don't flunk you and you walk out the door. You go out in a box. You know, it's not an easy place to
And
graduate
that was
from.
a school for sort of agents and CIA assets and operatives and people that worked within for the
Yes,
Americans.
yeah. The School of the Americas was set up in originally in Panama, um, and it was a training ground um, for uh, for sociopaths. You know, you had to be a sociopath to go there. You had to be a psycho. Uh, so, so Central and South American armies would send their most sociopathic officers and um, high-ranking non-commissioned officers to be properly trained in all kinds of nefarious things. Um, and it was done outside of the United States because it was against the law to do these things in the United States. At that time, I attended the school in 1972, and there was something starting at that time. And now I'm speaking with hindsight. Back then, again, it was need to know, right? I didn't know why I was being trained or what I was um, being trained for, what the mission was. But there was something called Plan Condor, Operation Condor. And it was the largest anti communist Cold War effort ever put together. Um, it was designed to kill every communist and every communist sympathizer in Central and South America we could get our hands on. The figures of the dead are go from a low of 50,000 to more than 250,000. Um,
And
they're never going to figure out
sorry
how
to
many people.
interject. This was something that you were more than willing to do. So for people who don't know, while you were at college, you tried to enlist in Vietnam in order to try and just kill some communists because you had such deep-seated resentment for everything that happened to your family. And
Right.
that's when Dr. Artime got in touch with you and said someone of your skills could be way more useful working for the agency rather than going on the front line, Vietnam, taking out a few and maybe getting taken out. And that's when you went to the School of Americas then. And so then,
Right. I was first of all, I was a rabid anti-communist. I mean, psychotically so. Um, so while other people were demonstrating against the Vietnam War, I had volunteered, and I'd been through airborne school. I was going to be an elite warrior, um, and that was my entire focus. I was going to graduate, and I was going to Vietnam, and I was going to join a U.S. Army Cuban brigade that was fighting in Vietnam. A lot of the veterans of the Bay of Pigs of the betrayal joined the U.S. Army afterwards because they were as rabid anti-communists as I was. I mean, it was something the community all shared. You know, we were all um, unless you've lost your homeland, unless you shed blood for freedom, you can't understand this. You know, it's hard. It's hard to get the point across. I mean, there wasn't a Cuban in Miami. that wasn't working somehow to the overthrow of communism. It didn't matter what you did. You had a job so you could eat and put a roof over your head, and then every waking moment afterwards was, how are we going to get these communists out of our home? You know, it was psychotic. In 1972, I mean, I was ready to ship out. Dr. Artime, who was the CIA's, they used to call him the CIA's golden boy. He led the troops on the beach and was captured, and we had to ransom him back. He was a heroic figure, a hero, a friend of my family. And he had been Osvaldo's commanding officer. So he came to me and said, look, we have other uses for you. We don't want you to go to Vietnam. So I told him, well, that's fine, but look, I signed on the dotted line. I'm a soldier. I'm going. And he said, no, that doesn't work. That's not a problem. I said, well, how can that not be a problem? I mean, I was a child. I was 19 years old. I was truly a child. And he said, no, ever since I got back from Cuba, I've been working for the CIA. It's not a secret. And I have a use for you. So a couple of days later, my file disappeared from the U.S. Army. I mean, I was no longer. It wasn't the day of computers. It was the day of papers. You know, files and papers. That's it. Everything I'd done ceased to exist. I was at a Jesuit university. Artime was a graduate of a Jesuit university. I mean, we have this Jesuit background. We went to speak to the president of the university, and the president of the Jesuits are warriors, you know.
I've actually done a load of research on them after obviously reading about yourself and thinking, oh my God, and even today looking into the educational way that Jesuits are real critical thinkers and they have a different sort of educational process. But I think whatever they're doing clearly is brilliant and works.
Oh yeah, the Jesuits are a piece of work. Very laudable people, very laudable people. So the president of the university, Artime said, look, we're going to need Ramon. Everybody knew who Artime was. And said, look, Ramon's going to pass all these classes, but we're going to need him to go and do stuff. And do stuff was go to the School of the Americas. It was at Fort Gullick in Panama. And the Father Terry said, okay, as long as he passes the tests, I have no problems. He can spend his senior year anywhere he wants. I just want him back here to take the tests and the finals and graduate. But he has to pass. And I did. I mean, it wasn't. It was my final year. I had taken every hard class. I had taken everything. I was just coasting till I got on the plane for Vietnam. So it was an easy thing for me to do. And that was the start of my long journey into what can sometimes be called just a tragedy, or a fight for freedom. You know, everybody had, you know, Marcus Aurelius said it, everything you hear is opinion, everything you see is perspective. I give my perspective and opinion. Some people have said my life was heroic, and some people have said my life was a nightmare. The judge said my life was an American nightmare. You know,
I think your life's been the most brilliant adventure, and I'm all about adventures and living. And hopefully, it hasn't filled you with too much post-traumatic stress disorder. But if you got away from that, it's been for me absolutely brilliant. And I love adventures and characters and all the infamous people you've been around and all the stuff you did. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Well, like I said, it was a day at the office. Looking back, yeah. Um, what I handled was money, and money touches everything. And it ended up being a lot of these people that I worked with and financed, etc., ended up being historic figures. I mean, I can't get past Pablo Escobar.
Of
I
course.
think I think I did a lot more interesting things than Pablo Escobar, but he's a folk hero to a lot of people. He gets people's imaginations.
Absolutely. So you said
Going.
that you got into you're an expert in finance. Was it at the School of Americas that they decided that you were going to go into that sort of field, or was it after the School of Americas that you got the accountancy qualifications and Dr. Artime decided, right, this is the perfect role for you, and I can give you a lot of clients from the community in order to get in as a cover? How did that work?
Okay, my life is a perfect example of Carl Jung's synchronicity. Okay, I went to uh, a Jesuit university because my family always went there, and I studied finance and accounting because my family always studied finance and accounting. It was about the bank and the money. So I was getting that education no matter what. After our team had recruited me, um, and you have to remember when I got off the plane at Fort Gullick, I was really almost blindfolded. I was just following him blindly. He said, "We're going to take you down there and we're going to train you, and then um, that's step one, and then we'll talk about everything that comes afterwards." Well, in retrospect, because hindsight is 2020, the reason I went to the school to Fort Gullick first was because not everybody survived. So they wanted to make sure I survived that before they spent a whole lot of money training me to be the world's most effective money launderer. You know, and they didn't train me to be the world's most effective money launderer. They trained me to be the world's most effective covert operative financier, which is harder than laundering money. I mean, when you send agents to a foreign country to do nefarious things and you pull them out and erase behind you, it's really a hard job, you know. And erasing, I've come to accept a lot. And I don't want you to think I did not have post-traumatic stress. Don't want you to think that I haven't had soul searching. Um, I've been through a lot. I've been through a lot, but I'm to the point where I admit things, not because I'm a cold-hearted sociopath. I admit things because I was given a mission and I followed it, and there was no morality involved in it. We were going to save the world. We were going to win the Cold War, and there was nothing going to stop us. Okay?
So you obviously went through the full training. Like I said, you'd already done a college degree in finance, and then did you actually do the full accountancy qualification as well after leaving the School of Americas?
Absolutely. That's something else also that the books and movies get wrong. There is no cover. In this world we lived in, you had to be what you said you were. If you were going to be if your missions required you to be a surgeon, they sent a surgeon. If your mission required you to be a CPA, you had to pass. But the caliber of people that's recruited is just very high. None of us have any problems getting the qualifications required. So I did. I passed the CPA exam. They have this requirement of continuing education. So, you get your master's, you get your PhD. If you last long enough, you get everything. So I was a real CPA. I was just a CPA with a unusual skill set. Okay. Um, and I did not have to worry about succeeding in life. I mean, the firm was provided for me. The clients were provided for me. Um, Everything that I needed to for the mission was provided. Um, I don't know how I would have done if I'd have really tried to be a CPA in the private world. But all I had to do was get the qualifications. Everything else was given to me. The firm, clients, all the business I needed for a cover. Um, so it made it easy.
And then what about getting into your first sort of criminal clients, people that needed laundering? Was it Dr. Artime that sort of got you in your initial clients from the Cuban community? I know a lot of the fishermen started smuggling in marijuana and cannabis. Was it through his introductions that it all sort of everything fell?
Yes. This is it's not even a secret, but it's a dirty little fact that um, historically the CIA has needed off the books money to carry out missions. Congress provides so much, and that money is very traceable. I mean, it's hard to do something completely covert with government money. So the CIA has always been involved in nefarious things. Um, Vietnam, they did heroin. In my area, it was cocaine. I mean, the fight for freedom requires off the books money, and all the off the books money comes from off the books things. Okay, um, so so
So what you're trying to say is that the CIA are almost sort of a shadow government that when Congress decides what they can and can't do, and when they get the decisions they don't like, they will create the funding by whatever means for the greater good, and they decide more so than the politicians. It's almost like you've got two governments going on at the same time within
yeah.
America, something like that. Would you say?
Let me. Well, I'm sorry. I wish I had. We had rules of engagement, and when we read those rules of engagements to civilians, um, they just absolutely can't believe what they're hearing. But the rules were put down by President Herbert Hoover. Basically, the rules say we're fighting an enemy whose goal is to destroy us, wipe us off the face of this earth. And to fight this enemy, we are going to have to be smarter, more ruthless, and be prepared to do the morally reprehensible. And he uses those words. So when we got indoctrinated, and I say indoctrinated because I was 19. I mean, I was being brainwashed. But I was told you're going to have to go do some things that are really bad, some things that you're going to think are really bad, but they're not really bad because they've been approved. And then I was read the Hoover statement, and it ends with you'll have to do the morally reprehensible, and after you do that, we'll worry about telling the American people. So right from the get-go, not just myself, but every one of my brothers in arms were all assured that everything that we were going to do was okay. All right.
But I'm sure
So
you guys didn't need too much convincing anyway, because obviously your primal goal was to wipe out communists, and you guys would have done this for free anyway. And obviously, if you can get a license to do it, so you're not going to get in any trouble, please go and kill communists. and we'll
Yeah.
provide. You guys would have done it surely because you had such a deep-seated resentment. So I'm sure sort of the fears of you shouldn't be doing this or should be, when it came to communists, everything was fine, surely.
Yeah. Yeah. When you recruit people, you have to recruit people that are properly motivated, right? And we were
Yeah,
more motivated than most.
absolutely. So they're very clever in the way they do things, aren't they? These Americans, they find people who to
Yeah.
kill their own enemies as part of the job.
Yeah. I mean, once you know what's happening, then you see it happening everywhere. You know, George Bush told the Kurds to revolt against Saddam Hussein, and they did. And then Saddam Hussein gassed 60,000 of them, women and children. And George Bush said, "Oh, oops, we're so
It's
sorry."
absolutely disgusting. Like I said, when they sent Cubans into the Bay of Pigs, they didn't back them up. And then when they get back, they decide, right, now you're going to go and do all these little jobs. You're not going to get any backing publicly, but you could do whatever you want privately. Please just go and do our dirty work for us.
Yeah, that's basically what we did. You know, I might sound glib, but I told you I was trained in financing, get everything going, and then going back and erasing. Well, erasing, in your mind, you might have thought, well, you know, he destroyed the paperwork and he did a, but erasing was in every mission, there are locals that assist the group, and some of those locals we could not afford to be captured or interrogated. So erasing meant you went and killed that local. You know, that's why I had the training. I
Yeah,
mean,
I didn't realize that. So I thought the erasing was going to kill in the enemies, which I thought that's no problem. I would have done that willingly. But if you happen to erase the people that actually assisted you and actually were okay, just to obviously get rid of the evidence, that's a slightly more difficult job, I would have found anyway.
well, uh, first you're brainwashed. You're already a zealot. And you say, look, if we're going to come back and do this again, we can't risk this information falling into enemy hands. So this guy's got to go. You know, um, uh, uh, we're a very educated group. We're very Catholic. So we used to call these people the Uriahs because in the Bible, in the second book of Samuel, King David sends Uriah, the husband of Bathsheba, into battle, and he sends him with orders. And when the generals at the battle read the orders, David told him, "Take Uriah, put him in the front of the fucking battle, and when the fighting gets hard, withdraw and make sure he gets killed." Um, so when we would set up a mission, we had our Uriahs. We knew from the onset who for sure wasn't making it back. Some of us didn't make it back because nothing goes according to plan. Okay, but when you start a mission, there were some people that were not coming back ever. Okay, and that's how you keep America safe and how you keep the Potemkin Village running. Um, you fight to the very last drop of everybody else's blood. Okay, it's a
Absolutely
hard.
shocking, shocking, but brilliant at the same time on America's part. It's so smart in the way they do stuff. Like you said, all the using people to fight their own enemies for America's gain. It's all very
Hey,
cold and calculated. And then behind,
Ukraine, Ukraine right now.
it's disgusting. It's
You know,
disgusting. I
they're
pray Trump
fighting.
gets into power and ends the war in Ukraine. And even Britain is sending 3 billion a year to Ukraine. But it's for what? And then Britain are condemning Israel while giving Israel the rockets to shoot Palestine. It's absolutely insane. And it's gone past the point of them creating the wars. The wars create the money now. It's a never-ending war, isn't it? So it's
Yeah. Look, Israel is a perfect example of what I was telling you, that I was trained to shoot the hostage and then shoot the hostage taker. Um, Hopefully, a non-fatal shot to the hostage and a fatal shot to the hostage taker. And that
crazy.
and that's what's happening in Israel. Hamas is embedded in the population. They're basically taking the Palestinians as hostages, as human shields. And the Israelis are saying, fine, we're going to shoot through the human shields. So you have 40, 50, I don't know how many thousands of dead Palestinians, because those Palestinians died because the Israelis are shooting through them to get to the
Yeah, it's
to the
disgusting.
enemy.
It's crazy trying to work out whether Israel holds some sort of power over America and Britain, or really America and Britain control Israel, but pretend they're an independent sort of country to fight their battles for them without putting America and Britain on them. It's really difficult to work out.
It's not. The Israelis are exactly like the Cubans. They're there in the middle of the Arab world to represent American and European interests. And America and the Europeans are willing to finance the fight until the very last drop of every Israeli. That's a realpolitik, you know. It's what it is. Now they do these things theoretically so that you can leave your home and get on the tube and not be worried about somebody blowing it up. Okay, they do this so that the children of England um, can have a nice life without looking over their shoulder. That's the theory.
Well, yeah, I don't know about that anymore. I think we've got a bunch of tyrants, hidden communists running Britain at the moment, and it's they don't mind a few terrorist attacks going on in order to increase the laws and increase the surveillance on the ordinary people these days. It's become
Don't get me going on that. I mean, uh, if you think uh, any bad thing that happens, 9/11, let's say, you know, in America, the attack on the World Trade Center, you're never going to convince me that the Americans didn't know it was coming and let it happen because they needed the reason to attack Iraq. They needed a reason, and so they sacrificed 3,000 Americans. That's you know, as Stalin said it best. Stalin said, "One death is a tragedy. A million deaths is a statistic."
I read that in your thing, and I love that quote, even though it's a bit sadistic. It's a
It's
great quote.
horrible, but it's reality. I mean, those 3,000 people that died at the World Trade Center were just a statistic.
Who was it? One of your bosses? Was it Dr. Atime that liked the quotes? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
but you know, so we are manipulated. We really are.
100%. I'm the same as you. I don't believe in anything that I see anymore. And even going back, history's told us that a lot of the disasters, a lot of the wars, it's all a smoke and mirror, isn't it? Unfortunately.
It is. I mean, they rule the world, and they rule the world and see us as chess pieces, you know, and they don't see us as queens and kings and bishops. They see us as little pawns, you know, to be sacrificed and used.
Become more and more clear as time's gone on, and even in Britain these days, there's literally zero freedom of speech. And since the new government's come in a couple of months, but they're locking people up for talking bad about the government in any given way. It's no different from a communist country at this point.
No, the people in power, whether they're the Democratic Party, the Republicans, the Tories, Labor, the Communist Party, or the names are interchangeable. You know,
Absolutely.
it's bread and circus. They keep us. For instance, America has an election on
2
Tuesday,
weeks.
um, and they keep everybody, you know, uh, thinking that it's going to make a difference.
I'm actually a little bit of a believer in Trump. I know there's a whole system behind it, but I'm praying that Trump gets into power and ends it, because I believe that he's one of the people that hopefully is slightly less bad than the rest. mean, the problem is
Listen,
like Britain and America. These people aren't getting into power for six-figure salaries when they're worth tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, and they're not doing it for the greater good of the people. They're doing it to protect their own power, aren't they? Surely.
yeah. Listen, if Trump gets in, it's because the powers, and we'll never know who the real powers are, have determined that they want to change the status quo and they need a disruptor. If Kamala wins, it's because they determined that they want to maintain the status quo for a while. But let me tell you something, because I'm a money man, right? America owes $35 trillion.
I've seen.
America can't pay the debt.
Yeah, but what does it matter? It doesn't matter. They're just paper figures. But more so than the government, surely it's the BlackRocks, the JP Morgans. They're more powerful than surely the governments. I've seen that JP Morgan are loaning all the money to these governments. They're loaning all the money to Ukraine. They've pretty much bought Ukraine at this point, it seems like, unless Russia take it over.
Yeah, and Cargill has bought all the land.
Disgusting.
Um, but look, at some point, they're going to have to devalue the dollar greatly, or just have this great big ass world war to give them an excuse not to pay anything that they owe, because they owe $35 trillion, right? Um, so just take it personally, okay? If you owe a lot of money to a friend, you have two options. You can pay your friend back, or you can get into a fight with your friend and say, well, now I'm not going to pay you because I'm mad at you. You know, America's going to have to make that decision very soon, because the interest payments are very uh, shortly. They're going to get to a point where they can't even make the interest payment. You
And
know,
what if America refused to pay this? Who goes to war with America over mispayments?
well, it's not that they're going to go to war, but Europe will default as well. Okay, and if everybody defaults, then nothing happened. You know, they're just going to default, and if
Britain and
uh,
America are broken economies, just where they're consumer economies. We don't manufacture anything in either of the countries anymore, and it's
yeah,
just a bubble waiting to burst. That's getting more and more in debt every day. It's a disgrace how they've let this happen.
well, look, uh, I can't see what's going to happen tomorrow, but I can see what's going to happen in 50 years. And in 50 years, there's going to be a lot more poor people in the world than there are today. And in 50 years, the people that are going to be doing better are going to be farmers, uh, carpenters, mechanics, people with skills. Okay. I have no skill. I can barely drive a nail. I have no ability to fix my car. I can change a light bulb. Um, but if the world gets to the point where finance is no longer important because we no longer pay the debts, etc., I have no skill. You know, I know the stock markets, I know finance, I lend money. Uh, but at some point, if I needed to cultivate a carrot, I'd be in trouble. It's dollars and cents.
Obviously, going back to your story, you obviously didn't have these problems. You come out the School of America, you've gone through your accountancy training, you now got a load of legit clients as well as a load of illegitimate clients through Dr. Atime, through the Cuban community, through the fishermen, and you started thriving at a very young age, and you became financially free at a young age. Would you say you became a millionaire?
Absolutely. I arrived in Miami in 1973, and by 1975, I was a multi-millionaire. But there was something really, really pivotal in my life. Um, I got to Miami, have a great salary. I'm a young kid, well dressed. I used to drive a Jaguar XK. I love English cars. So Dr. Artime takes me to the monument to our fallen heroes at the Bay of Pigs. And here I am, 20 years old. And I mean, I'm a I was a pretty, for my age, I was very far ahead of my peers, superb education, superb training. When I got out of the School of the Americas, Artimo went to pick me up. And he said, look, from now on, when you enter a room, there's only three things that can happen. You're going to be the smartest, best educated, best connected guy in the room, or you're going to be the deadliest guy in the room. And the third time, most of the time, you're going to be both by virtue of my training and education and preparation. Then he takes me to the monument here in Little Havana and says, that's not a monument to our heroes. We built that monument to remember the American betrayal. So let me tell you what we're going to do. We're never going to be betrayed again like we were betrayed on that beach and be left helpless. Every operation we're going to run, we're going to have a fund for each one of us for the day we get betrayed again. And you're going to get betrayed again. You're going to be betrayed. So you need to be ready. Okay, so I didn't really understand what he was saying at the time. Of course, many years later, when I was betrayed, I understood it perfectly. But every single operation we ran, if it was $2 million, we spent $2 million and took $2 million and put it aside for us so that we could face the world at the time of the betrayal. So we had our eyes wide open. We were doing all this crime, all these horrendous things. But we knew our days were numbered, and we always had a plan for the day after. So we weren't that innocent and we weren't that idealistic. We were going to kill everybody, but we were going to make sure we survived as well. By 1975, I was a multi-millionaire, had a bang. We were running operations all over Central and South America. We were doing drug deals. We were running the world's largest blood bank. We were bleeding Nicaragua dry. We were financing all these operations with the blood of Nicaraguan peasants. I mean, we would drain the blood of 1,000 to 2,000 Nicaraguans a day. It was a reusable resource. You took the blood from these people and they created more blood. I mean,
insane.
It's insane, but we had the world's largest plasma providing company, and whose purpose was twofold: make everybody rich and finance the operation. Okay, so we were it was insane. I mean, here I'm a 20, well, I was 25 years old, with a mansion, a Rolls Royce, Mercedes Benz, a yacht. I mean, all the toys, right? And one day, one of my clients, two of my clients come in, and they say, "Hey, look, the Colombian that provides us our stuff wants to meet you." And I mean, I was working under discipline. I wasn't a free agent. I couldn't take a client unless it was approved. And so I just told him, look, forget about it. I don't need any more clients. I'm doing fine and I'm very busy. I don't have time for clients. So a few weeks pass and my clients come in again and they bring a black sense in my briefcase, give it to me. I open it up and it's got a few $100,000 in it. And I said, oh, good, what do you want me to do with this? Because that's what I did for them. They would bring me money, I would launder it. And he said, no, 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 that's not ours. The Colombian sent you that. He says, that's yours just for one meeting. And I said, well, let me get back to you. I went to talk to Dr. Artime, and I told him, hey, look, this Colombian just won't leave me alone. He wants to meet. What do I do? And he said, well, let me run it up, and I'll let you know. A few days passed, and he said, they said to go ahead and meet the guy, see what's what. I said, okay. So I gave him an appointment at my bank in Panama. And, I was a dandy. I had my suits made in London by H. Huntsman. I had my shirts made at Paris by Hermès. My shoes were handmade in Italy by Testoni. And I said, okay, so I'm sitting there in my English library, dressed to the nines, waiting for this meeting. My secretary buzzes me that your appointments are here. And I said, show them in. Pablo walks in with his cousin, Gustavo. They're dressed in cowboy shirts, jeans, and cowboy boots. They look like they just left their horses outside. They walk in, and they're actually quite humble. They're not arrogant. They sit across the desk from me, and I told them, well, gentlemen, you paid for this meeting, so the agenda's yours. Tell me what you want. And then Pablo said, look, we have a pretty big business in the United States. We supply your clients, but we have a lot more people like your clients, a lot more. And we have a problem. Of all the people that we supply, the only people that pay on time, the money gets to the bank with no problems. The only people that are flawless in the delivery are your clients. And we asked them how the hell they did it. And they said, well, we don't do it. Our accountant does it for us. And he gave us your name. He said, and what we want you to do is we want you to do for all of our clients what you do for, my clients' name were Benny and Willie. We want you to do for the rest of our clients what you do for Benny and Willie. And I said, well, there's a problem. Benny and Willie are my clients, but all those people that are your clients are not my clients. And Pablo says, well, if you agree to do this for us, I guarantee you they'll be your clients. And I said, well, give me an idea of what I'm talking about, because I have to formulate a plan, see if I can do it, blah, blah, blah. And there's a joke here at the end. So Pablo tells me how many customers he has and how much money he has. And Gustavo's sitting next to him, and Gustavo's, nodding his head, yeah, yeah. And I say, okay, well, thank you. I'll tell you what. Let me think about this. Let me see what I have to do to take care of your clients, and I will get back to you. Okay. So he had given me a figure, and he had told me it was about $20 million a month. But we're talking about $1975, so
Insane amount of money. And this obviously must have been way more than you'd be doing.
Yeah, because I was doing a few million.
And doing extremely, extremely well off
Extremely
that.
well, because the multiplying factor for money from 1975 to today is 16. So you have to have $16 of today's money to equal $1 of 1975 money. Money's been devalued greatly. So anyway, he tells me about $20 million a month, which was substantial. So I go back to Dr. Artime. I got debriefed. I told him about the meeting. I told him about the Cowboys. I said, these people said $20 million, but they didn't look like $20 million. I mean, I'm an arrogant little fucker. I said they probably exaggerated. They probably told me twice the amount that they were really running. This it's probably 10 million. And here's the joke. Pablo was afraid to tell me the truth. He told me 20 million. I cut it down to 10, but when we started, the real figure was 50 million. They were afraid to say the truth, and they were uh, understating it by over 50%. And then I cut that down by half. So you can imagine when we started, what a surprise that was. And
Of course. So in order to do this, though, like you said, it was vastly, vastly more than you'd been doing already. And obviously you'd set up a sort of system in place, kind of using Panama to put a lot of the money through. But you weren't dealing directly with the sort of main people at that time, obviously, in Noriega. He wasn't in power as such, but he was still a main guy between the army in it. So it was at that point there that you needed to go and negotiate with Noriega, or certainly feel out the ground to see if something could be done. And didn't you arrange to have a meeting with Noriega after that?
Yeah, you have to remember that this is not overnight. Okay, I had the meetings. I got the go ahead. I mean, there was some bureaucratic wait along. Finally, they decided, well, look, if it's only $10 million a month, it's still a lot of money, and we can use that. So go ahead and tell him, yeah. So I had to tell Pablo yes, and I had to train his collectors. I mean, up to that point, we were all in house. We were teams of operatives, and we worked in house. For the very first time, I was going to go outside of my team and train a new team, the Colombian team. Okay, of course I knew how to do it because once you've done it once, you have the training. But it was a big job. So I needed Pablo to provide collectors for the money. I needed to train the collectors. It took me about a year. He hired me to be his CFO, in effect. Of course, drug cartels don't use the term CFO, but in fact, that's what I ended up being. It ended up being a huge system. It ended up being just and of course, Pablo was in his infancy then. When he got me on board, he didn't realize this, but he got the US government on board with all of our resources. So we opened doors for him that he never dreamed that could be open. And of course, everybody likes the money, and these covert operations cost a lot of money. So it was a symbiosis from heaven. I had trained all these people, and all of a sudden, I had access to several thousand potential fighters in our war.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely insane. People don't understand the scope of it, but I heard you talking about within Medellin, Pablo had 3,000 sicarios at one point that he was able to give.
3,000.
There was
Yeah,
this
at one point, I needed an army to solve the Marta Ochoa kidnapping.
story. Talk to us about what happened. Obviously, the Choas were led by Don Fabio, and their sister got his daughter, the sister of the brothers, got
His
kidnapped.
daughter got kidnapped. One of the things that people don't understand is that when I started with Pablo, it was Pablo, and there were other little gangs. Okay, there were the Ochoas, the Gachas, the Leathers, the Rodriguezes. They were all separate gangs. But when I came on board for Pablo, I brought corporate organization to the team. And that gave Pablo a distinct advantage to every other gang. So slowly, Pablo didn't take them over, but he, in fact, became the leader among equal. because he could get things done that they couldn't. For instance, when I needed something from Pablo, I would tell him, "Look, my friends need this, and what they're willing to do for you is they're going to give you the next 2 months of patrol schedule for the U.S. Navy and the Coast Guard. Your ships will be able to slip through with no problem." That gave Pablo a distinct advantage over everybody else. So Pablo started selling his information. He started to tell the Ochoas, "Hey, look, I can get your stuff in guaranteed." So they started to send shipments as a group rather than just individually. Well, let me tell you, the day that I got the approval to take Pablo as a client, it was an extreme failure of imagination on the part of the US government, because they never imagined what modern accounting laundering techniques, covert laundering techniques applied to the drug business could do. And what it did was eventually create the largest cocaine cartel in the world, manufacturing 80% of the world's cocaine.
Absolutely. And so talk to me about, obviously with the Operation Condor, you were constantly out there to hunt down and kill terrorist groups. And obviously at the time in Colombia, you had M19 that were a
Yeah.
big force. And you had been fighting them sort of covertly for a long time. The Colombians had, the Americans had, the CIA had, and they hadn't managed to eradicate them in any given way. And it was only the capture of Marta Ochoa that was the pivotal point in using the cartel's assets at that point. And you sort of had to play mind games as such, because it could have been quite easy for the cartel to pay off M19 to get it released. But in a way, if you pay it off, it's how long to the next one. But really, obviously, your intention, the CIA and America, was to completely eradicate M19 by whatever means possible that you could conjure them to get them on side. And
Yeah, you have to remember that we were not law enforcement. We were not intelligence officers. We were killer teams. Every one of our teams was a killer team. Our mission was to capture, interrogate, get whatever intelligence we could get, and kill the people. We weren't analysts. We weren't. The information we wanted from the people we captured was who are we going to kill next. Okay, that was what we wanted to know. Who is your collaborator? Who am I going to kill next? So we were a pretty vicious group of people. At the time that we were discussing, M19, which was a Cuban island, a communist trained group of guerrillas, all of M19 were trained in Cuba.
oh, I didn't realize that. But yeah, I suppose Cuba was the South American sort of hub for communists.
Cuba exported terrorists, and the U.S. exported terrorist hunters, us. Okay. So M19 was all Cuban trained, all pretty good. But they had the same problem everybody in the world had. You can't do a revolution without money. And Cuba could give you training, but no money. So M19 had to finance itself. I told you to read Carlos Martiguela's book of the Urban Guerrilla.
I've read it since. It's absolutely insane. And if you can have half the skills that an urban guerrilla has, obviously I'm sure you had them. If I could have half the skills, my God, I'd be a force.
Well,
it's a brilliant book. It's very dangerous in the wrong hands, I'd say.
Right, but we knew our enemy. So since M19 needed a funding, they had this great idea. And the idea was, let's kidnap American executives and hold them for ransom. So that's what they were doing. So they would get executives from Shell or Exxon or IBM, wherever they could get them, kidnap them, and the American companies would pay up for their executives. So it was a pretty profitable thing, but they were paying a few $100,000. I mean, they weren't paying millions. So then a guy by the name of Bernal, the second in command of M19, has this light bulb go off in his head. He thinks, well, shit, if the Americans are paying a few $100,000 for these executives, let's just take some cartel people and they're going to pay us millions. That was his big light bulb. He didn't have the whole picture. So he goes and unilaterally, without discuss, he's the second in command of M19. He feels he doesn't have to discuss this with his boss, which was a guy named Bateman. And he didn't feel that Bateman had to discuss it with his bosses that were the Cubans. You know, this is an executive decision made by Bernal. His wife, a girl by the name of Marta Bernal, was friends with Marta Ochoa. And up to that point, the Colombians all led lives like normal people. They sent their kids to school, they came back, there was no problem. So Marta Bernal tells her husband, let's take Marta Ochoa. She's got no bodyguards, no nothing. We can just take her and we're going to get millions of dollars from her father. And they do. But they did not know that I had already been tasked with destroying M19 because M19 was kidnapping American executives. So I was running an operation in Panama. At the time that they kidnapped Marta Ochoa, I had a bunch of Israeli hunter-killer teams in Panama being taught 200 words of Spanish. And we were putting, Pablo had given me guides to embed with the Israeli hunter teams so that they could go into Colombia and hunt down M19 and kill them. It was above my pay grade why we were using Israelis. I don't know any of those. So I'm sitting in my office. The Israelis are getting trained. The Colombian embeds are in there. They're all getting to know each other. And we're almost to the point of launching. And Pablo calls me and says, I need you right now. I said, well, what happened? He says, Don Fabio's daughter's been kidnapped by M19. Well, Pablo already knew we were going to start an operation against M19 because he had given me his people to work with the Israelis. So he's like, what do we do? So I called my case. I said, I'll be there in a minute. Just wait for me. I had a jet waiting 24/7. I had 3 sets of pilots. So there would be a fresh set of pilots with that plane 24/7. That's the way we operate. So I called my case officer and I said, hey, you're not going to believe this shit. M19 just kidnapped Don Fabio's daughter. And the guy says, no, they can't be that stupid. And I said, yes, they can. So this operation is going to change immediately. I'm going to go down there right now, talk to Pablo, and I'll let you know. And usually, nobody wants to know details. They just want results. It's like, Ramon, you've been trained, you know what to do. Now you're a senior field operative. We got nothing to show you. You're the man. I mean, by that time, I had 8 years of experience. I'd survived assassination attempts. I was good to go. So I fly to Colombia. Pablo meets me, and we go to see Don Fabio. And I pick up a military officer from the U.S. Embassy who was on detachment to the CIA. and I pick up a Colombian general who was on detachment to us as well. I mean, I had reach. The money could reach anywhere. So I show up at Don Fabio's house, and now it's an armed camp. I mean, every soldier he has is armed to the teeth, and I mean, and they haven't made any demands yet. This is literally hours after the kidnapping, and I sit down with Don Fabio, and I tell him, Don Fabio, I know you're upset. I know I have daughters myself, so I can understand what I would be like if somebody took my daughter. And I know that you want to solve this problem immediately. But let me tell you that if you pay this ransom for your daughter, every one of you is going to live in fear for the rest of your life in Colombia. Every cousin, every daughter, everyone is going to be a target. You cannot afford to pay this. And he said, well, how can I not afford to pay this? I want my daughter back. I mean, he's upset. He weighs like 400 pounds. And I said, look, I brought this fellow from the American embassy, obvious soldier. I mean, you know, and General so-and-so. And the American soldier was in a suit, but the Colombian general was in his uniform. I said, these gentlemen have pledged to help me get your daughter back. And the guy said, yes, you know, the guy, we're here to help you. So Fabio knows that he's got the Americans that are going to help him, and he's got the whole goddamn Colombian government that's going to help him. That's resources. You know, he doesn't even ask how I have, because he just understands that the money talks. I said, look, what I need you to do is I need you to put me in charge of this. And Pablo's there and says, I agree. You know, Pablo's saying, Ramon's been wanting to go after M19. I've been helping him. He gives him a little bit of background. And Ochoa thinks about it. And he says, okay, you can be in charge, but whatever happens to my daughter happens to you. And I stood up and shook his hand. I said, it's a deal. At that point, you know, I said, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen an old-fashioned satellite phone. My phone weighed 30 pounds. It was a leather briefcase by Motorola. I could communicate anywhere in the world with this thing. It's the latest CIA issue. I gave him my phone number to that satellite phone. I said, when they call you, tell him, the guy that calls you, to call this number. I'm on it 24/7, and tell him I'm your money man, and I will arrange for the payment of your daughter. Don't tell him anything else. Tell him that I will pay for the return of your daughter.
From that point then, you were personally negotiating on the phone to M19 yourself, which was insane. But going back slightly to when Don Fabio threatened you.
Whatever happens to my daughter happens to you.
If something had happened to the daughter, what would have happened?
I would have killed Don Fabio, his whole family, and everybody, his whole DNA. Because at that point, I told him, I don't trust anybody, Don Fabio. I don't trust anybody here. I want to put my own security on you and your family. I'm going to bring some Israelis in to protect you. They cannot be bought. They cannot be threatened, because every one of these men that you have out here has families. And if they take one of their daughters, they can make them betray you. So I want you to let me give you security. And he said, yes. So I brought the Israeli hunter-killer teams to protect Don Fabio. And I told the embassy guy and the general, because they were worried. I said, you know, he said you, but they're going to do the same thing to us. I said, don't worry about it. If they kill the girl, The Israelis are going to kill every Ochoa on the face of the earth. Nothing's going to happen to us. Because you always have to have a backup and a Uriah. What happened was the leader of the cartel, Bateman, not Bernal, called. You know, it was a fait accompli, so he figured, fuck it, I might as well go ahead and get as much money. So he calls and asks for $25 million. So we're speaking in Spanish. And I told Bateman, do you recognize my accent? And he says, yeah, you're a Cuban. I said, yes, this is important. I want you to remember you're talking to a Cuban. This is really important. That's it. I'm going to give you an answer on the $25 million tomorrow. But look, I'm going to be upfront with you and very transparent. You are not going to like my answer tomorrow. You're simply not going to like it. And you're going to be mad. But I want you to remember not to touch one hair on Marta's head. When you receive my answer, I want you to call me again. And I know you're going to be mad. Don't touch the girl. You call me and we will work this through. Well, of course, that evening, we picked up about 20 people, killed them. Communists, we had files from the Colombian army. We picked up the first 20 we could find, killed them and hung them from trees, and put signs on them saying, death to the kidnappers, muerta secuestradores. This was a PSYOP operation put together by American psychiatrists, and we were going to kill as many communists as we could in the time allowed. So that was our answer. So of course, when they woke up in the morning and they saw all these people hanging from lampposts and trees, the guy calls me up, irate, telling me he's going to go and personally kill Marta and all that. I said, no. This is business. You mustn't do that. Because let me tell you, if you do that to Marta, we are going to kill every M19 member, every M19 sympathizer. We're going to wipe the DNA of your family, of Bernard's family, of everybody. This is war to the death. And I have just been given 3,000 soldiers to fight you. And let me tell you what I'm going to do every day from now till the day you return Marta. We're going to pick up your people. We're going to torture them, interrogate them so they give us names of other sympathizers, and we're going to kill them. And every morning you're going to get up and you're going to find more people hanging from lampposts. And that's what we did. And when we got to about 700 or 800, they just gave Marta back and apologized. Of course, we did horrible things in between. It's a long story, but the bottom line is that we terrorized the terrorists.
Insane.
And we got the girl back. And as a result of that, when they gave her back, I spoke to Bateman. I said, look, there's no need for us to be enemies. Okay, we had a disagreement. Some people died. But I've got a business offer for you. Let's meet now that we're friends. You're giving the girl back. And I'll make you an offer. So we had a meeting. It was Pablo, Gustavo, not Don Fabio. He was too fat. Well, I think it was Juan Ochoa. A bunch of us met with Bateman. And Bateman shows up to the meeting, and he's got an explosive vest on him, and he's got a dead man's switch, and he's sweating buckets. And I laughed and I said, Jaime, this is going to be a really short meeting because your thumb's going to get tired on that dead man's switch, So let's do this. we want to hire you to protect these gentlemen's coca fields. We're going to pay you handsomely for doing it. And here's Gustavo's phone number. You call him, and he'll arrange all the logistics. He'll arrange everything for you. You guys are going to have money to work, but you're going to work for us. Of course, at that point, they stopped being communist guerrillas. They just stopped being. They started being guns for hire.
Yeah.
Cuba lost all its power, and we got a pretty trained army as.
And what happened? What happened to him eventually?
Oh, we killed him.
Yeah.
We killed him because,
of course,
you just can't let that happen. We killed Bernal and we killed Batman, but not after we already had people embedded with their armies. And
indeed, so that must have been that was a massive success, and
it was.
I believe more so than any of your financial skills. Just listening to your main skill, you're an absolute master manipulator. Whether it was the M19, whether it's the tactics you used to beat them, whether it was Pablo dealing with him, whether it was Don Fabio dealing with him.
It's called School of the Americas. They trained the full package.
Yeah, so there, obviously, I know you're trained in sort of hitman, terrorism technique, all this sort of stuff, but even the silver tongue, the way to be able to manipulate someone nicely without.
It's all part of the training. I mean, I had some natural skills.
I would have loved to have gone to that school.
And they just enhanced them. That's all. They didn't recruit everybody, but everybody they recruited had to have all these array of skills. You had to have a brain, you had to have physical ability, you had to be an athlete. You had to bring a lot to the game, and then they just enhanced you. They made you
Indeed.
a powerful player.
And so someone else you were constantly trying to manipulate and get on your side, at times with difficulty, was Noriega. And going back to the money laundering side, we said that a lot of it was going through Panama at the time. And eventually, once you got the Colombians on board and started putting through 50, 100 million, 200 million a month, you needed to be dealing directly with Noriega. And so Noriega was also a CIA asset as well, wasn't he? That went to the School of Americas as well.
Absolutely, we're all graduated from the same place. He wasn't a Jesuit, but he went to the School of the Americas.
It's crazy. The Americans, and the British as well, they control the education of these people that end up becoming the leaders down the line. It's
hey, that's how you keep empires going. But Noriega and I had a special relationship. You've heard of love at first sight. Ours was hate at first sight. I went to when I went to university. My roommate, the Jesuits invented networking. Before computers, they invented networking. They took their students and they set them up with roommates in the college dorms, and they did it according to ability and future potential. I was put as a roommate to a fellow by the name of Jaime Ford. He came from one of the ruling families of Panama, and his uncle was the minister of economics for Panama. So that was my college roommate. Okay, as young boys do, we became brothers. We drank and we fucked around and we studied and we became close. The first summer I went. The first summer break, Jaime invited me to go to Panama to spend a couple of weeks back there with his family. And of course, I went. The Jesuits were footing the bill. I mean, I was a Jesuit scholar. The Jesuits weren't just footing my education, they were giving me, back then, a $200 a month stipend to live and to spend. And they sent me to Europe to study for a year. They covered all my expenses. So I end up in Panama in the city of Colón, which is on one end of the Panama Canal. Panama City is on one end, Colón is on the other. And Jaime's family was like the kings of Colón, you know. And Jaime's uncle is the minister of economics for Panama. So you can imagine. So Jaime had this Pontiac Firebird, brand new, beautiful Pontiac Firebird. So here are these two white kids tooling around the city of Colón. We're assholes, you know, young assholes. Money, we were fairly good looking kids. And in Colón, one of the army personnel in charge of the area was a young captain. It was Captain Noriega. Captain Noriega was 5 feet tall, ugly as sin. And now here are Jaime and me. I'm 6'2", Jaime's 6'5". We're lily white, arrogant shits. And here's this poor captain. And we were going to someplace. I don't remember where it was, but we had to go through a checkpoint. And poor Noriega was leading the checkpoint, you know. So we get there in this Pontiac Firebird, radio blasting, and Jaime tells the officer, "Open up! We're going through." You know, we're going through into the free trade zone in Panama. So you know, all the checkpoints were army personnel, and so we get there and we don't ask permission. Jaime looks at Noriega and says, "Open up!" You know, gives him this order. And he says, "And when my friend Ramon comes by, I don't want him stopped." Hate at first sight. I mean, Jesus, you know, it's horrible, horrible. But I didn't think anything of it. Fast forward to 1972. Artime arranges for me to go to School of the Americas. But the School of the Americas only trains foreign soldiers, doesn't train Americans, because their organizational charter is they can only train foreign soldiers. So I get to Panama with Artime, and they got a set of Panamanian IDs for me. He says, "Here, you're now Lieutenant Alejandro Mela Gutierrez." I can never forget that name. And here's your uniform. I look beautiful in the Panamanian uniform, you know. And says, "Tomorrow, the Panamanian liaison is coming, and he's going to take you to the school. So you're a lieutenant. The guy's picking you up as a major. He's going to take you to the school, introduce you, take your paperwork. So all set up. All right." Next day comes up. There I am in my beautiful Panamanian uniform with this beautiful hat that looked like they had this special hat. And they call from the desk down there, your escort is here. I put on my hat. I got my ID, everything. Walk down. Who the fuck do you think is there to escort me? Major Noriega. And of course, he knows I'm Ramon. And I got this fucking ID that says I'm Lieutenant Mela. But he knows I'm CIA. He's CIA. So, you know, like we pretend we don't know each other. So he escorted me to the school and vouched for me. And I went in. I notified our teammate immediately. I said, "Look, I'm blown. I know Noriega." The idea was they're not supposed to know who I am. And this guy already knew who I was. But they said, "It's all right. He's on our payroll." I said, "Okay." Um, then fast forward, now he's a colonel. Uh,
And he
but
must have been, sorry to interject, he must have been, I've, he always gets tarnished with people saying that he was a bit of a moronic character, not the most smart, but he must have been a brilliant character at the same time to have advanced in the way that he did. I know obviously he made some bad decisions, which obviously cost him horrifically down the line, but was he a brilliant character at the same time and genius?
he was extremely intelligent and a psychopath. Two of the requirements for the School of the Americas. The fact that he was little and ugly, they at the School of the Americas, they didn't rate you on beauty, or they rated you on intelligence and psychopathy. And he was at the top of the class in both of those things. So he became head of G2, which was military intelligence in Panama. I already had the bank. I was running quite a bit of money through. And all of a sudden, I start running the cartel money and I become important. I was just an ordinary CIA operative up to 1975. By 76, when I started running all that money through Panama, I was numero uno. I became all of a sudden important. And when I became important, I was in Noriega's uh, sight.
Of course.
He was intelligence, right? And it always bothered him that when I became important, his rank did not matter. He had to do as I said. So when I asked for something, it was yes, sir. He was the power behind the power, but when it came to Americans, he was just another gopher. And he had been told, whatever Ramon needs, Ramon gets. He he did not like the American yoke, you know.
Well, he was a megalomaniac tyrant, wasn't he? And so he didn't like being told by anyone.
No, and he didn't understand that he was viewed as our son of a bitch, you know. So he was told, layoff. Again, just more hatred and more hatred. Now, he wants to take over Panama, and he cannot take over Panama without the cartel, because the cartel has got the money flow. At that time, I had on my payroll the Panamanian general Paredes, and I had Paredes' son as a hostage in Medellin. So I got Panama running like a fucking Swiss clock. There's nothing that broken, nothing that needs to be fixed. But Noriega wants power. So he convenes a meeting in Panama. All the boys from Panama go, and of course I attend, you know. And Noriega makes a pitch for himself to take over from Paredes. And he tells the boys how, with him, with his intelligence, background, and network, he's going to be more effective than Paredes, because Paredes is just an army general who's running the place, but he has no infrastructure, no intelligence. You know, Paredes depends on Noriega. Um, Paredes is not exactly a puppet, but he's not totally in control. So I'm sitting there at the meeting with my arrogant ass, and I make a fatal mistake. I was not respectful to Noriega, because when he finishes the pitch, Pablo turns to me and says, "What do you think, Dr. Milian?" And I just told him what I told you. Hey, this is not broken. there's no need to change anything. Paredes has been faithful, a good employee. We have his son. There's nothing broken here. There's nothing to fix. If we start changing things, we're going to get some scrutiny. This is not going to be good for us. I mean, we had already killed the other general, Torrijos, to make the country pliable to us, to get Paredes in charge. So, we just can't fucking kill people every day. I mean, we got the right guy in power. Pablo looked at the other guys, and they told Noriega, no, thank you very much. We keep this the way it's going. Well, if this guy hated me before, his hatred became pathological. Okay, so you already said, hey, this guy's smart. He's smart, and he's psychotic. He can't kill me because besides being protected, I'm triply protected. I'm protected by the money, by the cartel, and by the CIA. I'm untouchable. So he's got to get me out of the way, and you got to give him. He's genius. He's got genius. He goes to George Bush and says, "Hey, look, I got some intel," because George Bush is the one that he was tight with Noriega, and Noriega had some leverage on George Bush. I don't know what he had, but he had some leverage on George Bush. He felt comfortable. So the American position, the CIA position, was plausible deniability. As long as I got things done, they didn't care how I got it done. I was a contractor, not an employee. I was a covert operative, not a paid salaried person like a
Yeah,
Cuban.
easy for them to say, no, he wasn't any part of ours. This is nothing.
We don't know this guy. We don't know this guy. Okay. So they're having problems with funding for the Contra effort. Congress belongs to the Democrats. They're not giving them any fucking money to fight the war. Money's tight. And Noriega goes to Bush and then to Casey and says, I don't know why you guys are having so many problems with money. Milian's got like $20 billion. Up to that point, the CIA did not know how much money I had. And at that point, they go, no shit. And you see the gears start running and says, God damn, with that money, if we get that nest egg, we don't have to go to Congress to ask him for money ever again. I only had $11 billion. They get this great idea. So let's steal the money. If we steal that money, we're never going to lack for money ever again. So I get called in, and they said, hey, we want the cartel's money. And I said, okay. I want you to give me one scenario where I survived this. And I said, you got 20 passports. You got the best training in the world. What are you talking about? You don't have any problems with this. I said, look, it's not just me. They're gonna come after my wife, my children, my parents, my cousins. They're gonna kill everybody. I mean, $11 billion is not petty cash. You think they're gonna take this lying down? And that was the very first time in my life I said no. I did not think we could run successfully. I just to give you I had $800 million personally in my getaway fund. Once again, doesn't sound much by today's standards, but
no, it is. But like you said, these cartels have so much money that if someone runs away with 11 billion of their money, they will put endless resources into finding them, even if it takes 1, 2, or 20 years.
I just did not think. I knew I could run successfully alone. I knew I could not run successfully with my whole family. It would be just a matter of time until one of them got homesick and called somebody.
Just going back to a story that I'd heard you say, Pablo really didn't like losing money. And there was a story going back slightly to, he was slightly prehistoric with it. He liked having boxes of cash as well as obviously the money in accounts and all this sort of stuff. So he used to send boxes of cash to Colombia that he used to keep in warehouse in Medellin.
Yeah.
And at certain points, you told him that this isn't really the most sensible way. So if you're going to do this, please take the oldest bit of money out when we put the new ones in there. And obviously this wasn't followed. And what happened, Ramon?
Okay. At the beginning, Pablo was not very sophisticated, and he loved to see his money. You know, you could explain to him about carried interest, about uh, uh, putting money to work in an investment fund. All this was Chinese to him. He wanted to see his money. So at the beginning, we would send him all his money. And he had uh, a very, very big warehouse where he kept his money. And in accounting, and in accounting, inventory accounting, you always, it's called FIFO, first in, first out. So every business in the world takes the oldest part in the factory, in the warehouse, and sells that first. So when I set up the warehouse, I told him, look, you have to use FIFO accounting. So the oldest money in here, the first money in here has to go out first. Okay? And that way you rotate the money all the time, etc. And I did this with all his staff there, you know, because we're not talking about boxes. We're talking about pallets of money. This money got moved around with a forklift, you know, and they would be 4 pallets high. Now, money is not paper. Money is cloth, and money has moisture. Okay. So I had given them a little training. I told them, you take the oldest money and you pay it out, and you got to rotate this. And everybody, you know, bobbed their head. Yes, we got it. You know, went away. Several months later, Pablo calls me up. We have an emergency. You have to come down here. The money's no good. I said, the money's no good. I mean, what do you mean? No, come, you know. Okay, get in my plane. I get there, we go to the warehouse, and what had happened was the moisture from all the money had been dripping down, dripping down, dripping down, and it had ended up in the bottom boxes. And all those bottom boxes had become uh, like paper mache. The, the, the bills were just welded together. Oh, and I looked at it, and I'm on, you know, I'm looking at the bottom box, so I'm not on my knees, but I'm scrunched down. And each box is labeled, and it has the amount, the location where it comes from, who sent it. You know, it's got tracking data. And one of the tracking data is the date. So I said, Pablo, come down here, please. He scrunches down. He and I are looking at this box, and I said, look at the date on the box. Do you remember what I told you about first in had to go out? They haven't been rotating the money. And he looks at the date. And Pablo always carried a 38 revolver, not in a holster, just in his waistband, a small 38 revolver. The manager of the warehouse is standing between us. He and I are down looking at the box. The guy's standing straight up. Pablo gets up, pulls out the revolver as he's getting up, and bam, bam, puts 2 in the guy's head. You either follow orders or you don't, and there's a price to pay. I was very upset because I got blood spatter all over my suit and my shirt. And Pablo looks at me and I'm looking at my shirt. And I mean, I got this blood spatter because, when you shoot, it doesn't always go out the back, it comes out the front, and shit, I had blood all over me. And I'm kind of pissed off. He looks at me and he says, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. We'll get you cleaned up. We're psychopaths. He's not worried about the guy he just shot. He's worried that he's ruined my clothing, you know. And that's Pablo in a nutshell.
Indeed. And so another occasion that I thought was quite interesting was when one of Pablo's men ended up upsetting you at a party by maybe slightly embarrassing you by bringing a girl over, and there was some sort of incident.
We were at a party. It was a big party. I'll say the name of the place, and it won't mean anything to you, but you can look it up there. We were at the Intercontinental Hotel in Medellin. We had rented the entire hotel. We're having this huge party. We own 7 television stations, about 30 radio stations. We finance all the novellas in the country. We had access to all the stars, the women. So we're sitting there at a table, and each one of us has this beautiful starlet, this soap opera princess, right? And we're having a really good time. And one of Pablo's lieutenants comes to the table and asks the girl that I'm with to dance. He's had a few too many. And I swear to God, all I did was I looked up to him like this. I said nothing. And looked back, and the girl looks up and says, no, no, thank you. And that was the end. Nothing else happened. The next day, there's a knock at the hotel, at my door, at my room door. And of course, I'm not worried about security because we got the whole hotel locked down. It's ours for the duration. I think it's breakfast that I ordered. So I opened the door to get my breakfast, and there's no breakfast there, but there's a laundry cart and 3 of Pablo's guys. They're wheeling the laundry cart, and they said, Dr. Milian, Don Pablo wants to express his apologies for the terrible insult last night, and he hopes that this makes it okay. And they take the top off the laundry cart, and there's the guy dead, dead as a doornail. Pablo had this quality. He always paid you with interest. If you were loyal to him, he'd give you the shirt off his back. If you fucked with him, he'd kill your wife, your children, your dog, your goldfish, your bird, your parents, and anybody else he could get a hold of. If you did your job, did as you were told, you got paid with interest. If you didn't do your job, you got punished with interest. And look, you have an organization of psychopaths. It has to be run with discipline. Everybody has to know what the downside is. Look, whenever they send me their collectors up to the U.S., the collectors were interviewed by me first, and if I approved them, they had to put their entire family as hostages in this little village we made. All these houses and a swimming pool. It was a great place to live, but they weren't leaving. While you were collecting money in the U.S. for us, we had your family down in Colombia. So I would sit down with these prospective collectors and I'd say, look, we expect from you complete loyalty. And we expect from you complete honesty. If I hire you, I'm going to give you some special training. And you're going to feel like a Superman after I finish with you. And if you pass my training, you're going to be rich. You're going to go to the United States and work for me for 6 months, 24/7. And after the 6 months are over, you're coming back to Colombia, and I'm going to give you $100,000 and your family back. And you can start a new life, and nothing's going to happen to you. If in 6 months you want to do it again, you let me know, and I'll give you another tour of duty elsewhere. Now, I want you to know that I have 100 ways of catching you if you steal. Don't think that you can take 1 cent from us. I will catch you. And when I catch you, I'm not going to do anything to you. But I'm going to call Don Pablo and Gustavo, and I'm going to tell him, you robbed us. I'm going to show them the proof. They're going to take you, bring you back here, and they're going to kill your whole family in front of you. Then they're going to take you and hang you up by your feet, douse you with gasoline, and set you on fire in front of all the other collectors as an example to anyone that can think they can steal from us successfully. So, if you think you can steal, I advise you not to do it and leave right now and nothing happens. But if you accept the job and you steal, I will catch you and I will make the call. You will have murdered your entire family and you will have committed suicide. And I gave this little speech to every single collector because we were transparent and upfront. And the honest ones lived happily ever after and had enough money. Because let me tell you, with $100,000, you could back then you could buy a house, open up a business. And I didn't threaten them. I made them a promise. I'm going to catch you, and this is going to happen to you. And of course, there's always a few knuckleheads, and they were dealt with in exactly that way. And you might say, wow, this is a horrendous thing. But look, we did not go around hurting innocent people. We went around killing people that fucked with us. People who had been told, we had that saying, plata or plomo, which is lead or silver. It rhymes in Spanish, plata o plomo. We always put silver first. We always offer money. We always offer the easy route first. But if you want to fuck with us, you're getting lead. To a certain point, we were a people who were scrupulously honest within our society, and we kept our word. You know, we left thousands of rich people. We made them rich. And we left hundreds of dead people because there's always going to be knuckleheads.
But unfortunately, like you said, everything comes to an end. And so when Noriega informed to Bush on quite how much money you had, and then that was sort of a game changer. The Americans brought you in and told you, you've got to give this up. You refused.
I just pretended it was business as usual to let them make the first move. And of course, their first move was just to arrest me with no proof or anything and say, okay, now it's going to be hardball. Give us the money and we'll let you go. And I said, well, look, I said no before. I'm saying no again. So the next step was they indicted me, a pretty large indictment. I kept the money. I kept the cocaine. I mean, hey, we need to bribe this guy. He wants 3 kilos. Here, come pick it up. Pay the guy. We finance our operations, you know, with anything, with blood, with cocaine, with whatever. I mean, and cocaine was in this category of money. It was the currency we used. We used to pay for a lot of stuff. It was pure cocaine, right? So a guy says, I'll do this for back then, cocaine was like 75,000 a kilo. So when we had to pay something, okay, so let's say a guy said, I'll do this for you for 150,000. we would say, how do you want it? Do you want 150,000 wired to you, or do you want two keys? Well, if we gave them two keys, it was to our benefit. They were costing us 9,000. Okay. So I was getting $150,000 worth of value for, say, 20 grand. Okay. However, the guy that received the 2 kilos of cocaine received pure cocaine. He could cut that 4 times, and his 150 would become 600,000. No, and I couldn't be put in a position where I had to call Colombia. Oh yeah, send me a couple of kilos. I had to have an inventory of this stuff because we paid in cocaine a lot of the time, and they wanted the whole world to know I've been stopped. So they waited for me to get on my plane. I was taking $5 million to pay Noriega. It was Noriega's money. The only way I could be captured was Noriega gave up his own money. He paid $5 million to have me arrested. So in fact, Noriega gave up $5 million to have me taken out of the game. He had everything in the world, but he wanted power. When I said to get into the School of the Americas, you had to have two qualities. You had to have three. You had to have intelligence, you had to be a psychopath, and you had to have an incredible ego. Because you had to believe that you were better than anybody else, and you were going to go out into the world and you were going to dominate. We were a very specific group of psychopaths. We were highly functional psychopaths with tremendous egos and tremendous goals to our life. We were going to affect the world. You know, we weren't out there to do something small. Look, when we started selling blood, we sold more blood than anybody in the goddamn world. And when we sold cocaine, we sold more cocaine than anybody in the fucking world. And when we killed people, we killed more people. Operation Condor, we used to fly them out in the ocean and just throw them out of the plane. You know, we learned that really from Somoza. When Somoza wanted to get rid of somebody, they put him in a helicopter, and there was this volcano in Nicaragua that was still alive, you know, bubbling, and he would just fly his enemies over the volcano and throw them in. And he said to us, "This is great. There's nothing left, you know, and no way to prove anything." So he used the volcano, and we used the ocean. We'd fly him out, you know, a couple hundred miles out to make sure the current took him away, and just throw him out the plane, you know. Here's what happens. The guys that decided to steal the money were like bureaucrats, right? They weren't field operatives. They were CIA employees. There's a big difference between a CIA employee analyst and a CIA covert operative. I mean, we're not even the same species, you know, or the same training or the same kind of person. I mean, when these guys thought that I would break by putting me in prison, that's laughable. You're threatening me with a good time, an American prison? Please, don't be foolish. So they didn't know who they were dealing with then they gave me a 43-year sentence and thought that would get my attention. And you know, articles that were written like, "This is insane. How can they give this guy 43 years for?" I mean, everybody that was in money laundering was like, "Fuck, you know, we thought we were going to get probation." I served 25 years. I got released in 2010. Yeah, I've been out 14 years. You know why I would never escape from a U.S. prison? Because there's no way of escaping prison without hurting guards. You either hurt them or kill them. And I was unwilling to hurt innocent people.
And so whatever happened to this 11 billion, Dr. Milian?
It's still it went through Allgemeine Bank Netherlands to Societe Generale, and in a few more years it's going to be a dormant account, and the banks are going to divide up the money with the governments. After 50 years dormant, the banks just split it with the governments.
And whatever happened to your 800 million? I hope you've been enjoying that over the last 14
I
years.
haven't worked a day in my life since I got out. My family has lived very well, uh, and we lack for nothing. And all my children graduated from universities. My youngest daughter graduated from Harvard. They lived great, normal lives. They lack for nothing, and I returned to the world, and I lack for nothing. So I'm an old man now, but I'm still a stone cold killer. I'm still in charge of all my faculties. Um, I ran my investment funds from inside of prison. I knew exactly what was going on. I always expected it. I was always ready. And for me, it's just the cost of doing business. Um, what I really was expecting was to die. Okay. I expected at some point to die. So today I'm sitting here in front of you, and I'm the most surprised guy in the world that I survived. I expected at some point they were going to lose their patience and just kill me. They killed Pablo, and they come to see me at the prison. We just killed Pablo, and we're going to kill everybody. We got Leather in prison. We got the Ochoas in prison. We killed Gacha. You don't have to protect anybody. It's you can turn over the money and you can get out of here. And I'm a real asshole. So at that point, I said, okay, everybody's gone. Yeah, yeah. Now we're good to go. I said, no, we're not, because up to that point, it was their money I was protecting, but now it's my money, and I'm not fucking giving it up. I just wanted to piss them off and see it in their faces, and boy, they got pissed. And that's it. I ended up doing the 25 years, and no regrets. You know why people regret crime? Because 99% of them go to prison and come out broke.
Well, just like I said, sir, it's been absolutely fascinating listening to you over the last couple of hours. And
You
like I
now
said,
have my point of view and my opinion. I'm not telling you I'm right. I'm just telling you it's something for you to process.
absolutely. And like I said, I apologize for harassing you so much over the previous few months.
You did not harass me at all.
Unfortunately, I'm one of these people that's sort of obsessed. And when I find someone who's such a genius and brilliant mind like yourself in this field that I'm obsessed with, I couldn't do anything but try and get in touch with you. And I'd like to say a shout out to Al Prophet as well, who I'd seen you do various videos with in the past, which
Yeah.
are insane. And for anyone who's wants to see a little bit more, the 3 videos you did with the Kerry Committee on C-SPAN, I'll put the link for them below as well, because they are insane.
Well, look, I just hope that I shed a little light on a world that is really dark. And I shared my point of view. And once again, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying I know all the answers. I know I have some of the answers. I just, if anybody listens to this and sees the world a little clearer, then I did a good thing. I'm at that point in life where I'm just trying to do no harm. I'm not trying to do good. I'm just trying to do no harm. And if I can help, I'll help. That's
Well,
all.
like you say, I massively appreciate this opportunity. And I don't know if you know the term blowing smoke. I hate to blow smoke or to suck up, but you are brilliant, sir, and you are a genius.
Oh,
And it's been so
thank you so much.
intriguing. And I hope that this is the start. We could do lots more stuff. And like I said, I'm going to keep on your case and
My doors are open for you. I'll quote from my favorite movie, Casablanca. This looks like the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Indeed. So yeah, no, anything that I can gain from you, said I'd love to come out and visit you as well at a certain point. But for anyone who wants to reach out to you, have you got social media that they could get in touch with you on, or that I could put below in the description box?
Not really. I have the Now, where you got in touch with me, the
Instagram. Am I allowed to put your Instagram below in the video so people can message you or get in touch?
Sure.
All right,
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, Dr. Milian, it's been an absolute pleasure. And hopefully, like you said, this is the start of a journey and a friendship. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you very much for taking the time. It's greatly appreciated, sir.
Wish you all the best. Oh.